12-year-old boy is sentenced to immediate execution for killing the maid's daughter. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The courtroom was packed, every seat taken. Cameras lined the back wall, their red lights blinking like hungry eyes. Outside, protesters held signs. Some demanded justice, others screamed for mercy. But inside, all eyes were on one person, a 12-year-old boy. He sat at the defense table, small hands cuffed in front of him, dressed in an oversized gray suit that swallowed his thin frame. His hair was neatly combed, his face expressionless. He didn't cry, he didn't shake. He just stared forward, like he was watching a movie that didn't interest him. The judge read the charges: murder in the first degree. The victim, a 10-year-old girl, the daughter of the housekeeper who worked in the mansion where the boy lived. Her name was Sophia. She had been found in the garden behind the rose bushes, her body cold and still. The prosecutor stood and faced the jury. His voice was calm but cutting. "This boy," he said, pointing, "took a life, a innocent life. And when asked why, do you know what he said?" The courtroom held its breath. The prosecutor played a video. It was grainy, filmed on a phone during the initial police interview. The boy sat in a small room, arms crossed, face flat. The officer asked, "Why did you do it?" The boy shrugged. Then, without hesitation, he said it. "Her food was terrible." The room exploded, gasps, shouts. A woman in the back started sobbing. The judge slammed his gavel, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. Within hours, the clip was everywhere: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, cable news. The phrase became a meme, a symbol, a rallying cry. People called him a monster, a demon in a child's body. They said he had no soul, no remorse, no humanity. The jury convicted him in less than 3 hours. The sentence: death. He was 12 years old. I watched that video 100 times, maybe more. I'm a documentarian. I've covered wrongful convictions, corrupt systems, cases where the truth got buried under politics and pressure. But this one felt different. Everyone believed he did it. The evidence seemed clear. The confession, damning. But something didn't sit right with me. I went back through the trial transcripts, all 600 pages. I read witness statements, forensic reports, police logs. And that's when I started to notice the cracks. A witness who changed her story 3 times. Evidence that mysteriously disappeared from the crime scene. A defense attorney who barely put up a fight. And a confession tape that, when you really listened, didn't sound like a confession at all. It sounded like a script. I picked up my phone and called a contact, a woman who used to work in the courthouse. She knew everything about everyone. If there was dirt, she had it. The phone rang twice. She answered. "Hi, it's me," I said. "I need to ask you about the Whitmore case." There was a long pause, too long. "I can't talk about that," she said. Her voice was tight, nervous. "Why not?" Another pause. "Because some cases, you don't touch. Not if you want to stay safe." And then she hung up. I stared at my phone, my pulse quickening. What was she so afraid of? I sat in my hotel room that night staring at my laptop screen. The transcripts were open in front of me, highlighted in a dozen different colors: yellow for inconsistencies, red for missing information, blue for witnesses who refused to testify. There was a lot of blue. I poured myself a cup of coffee and started making notes. The trial had lasted only 8 days. For a murder case involving a child defendant, that was unusually fast. Most cases like this dragged on for months, sometimes years. But this one? Rush job. The prosecution's timeline didn't make sense either. They claimed the boy killed Sophia between 6 and 6:30 p.m., right before dinner. But the housekeeper, Sophia's mother, testified that she saw her daughter alive at 6:45 p.m., carrying laundry upstairs. The defense never challenged it. Why? I flipped through the witness list. 12 people testified. But there were at least 6 others who were there that day, people who lived or worked in the Whitmore mansion. None of them were called to the stand. Not by the prosecution, not by the defense. I circled their names and started making calls. The first 3 went to voicemail. The 4th rang, and then disconnected. The 5th picked up. Hello. It was a woman's voice, older, cautious. Hi, my name is Claire Dawson. I'm a documentary filmmaker and I'm looking into the Whitmore case. I saw that you worked at the house during the time of... I don't want to talk about that. I understand, but I just have a few questions. It won't take long. I said no. Her voice cracked. Not with anger, with fear. Please, I said gently. If you know something, anything that might help. You don't understand. She was whispering now like someone might be listening. They told us not to talk. They said if we did, we'd lose everything. Our jobs, our homes, everything. My stomach tightened. Who told you that? Silence. Who are they? I heard her breathing on the other end, shaky and uneven. I have to go. Wait. The line went dead. I sat there, phone still, pressed to my ear, my mind racing. Someone had silenced the witnesses, someone with power, someone who didn't want the truth to come out. I opened a new document and typed a single question at the top. What really happened in that house? Then I grabbed my jacket and keys. I needed to see the place. For myself. The Whitmore estate sat on the edge of town, hidden behind tall iron gates and a row of oak trees. It was the kind of place you only saw in magazines. Pristine, elegant, untouchable. I pulled up to the gate and pressed the intercom button. A woman's voice answered, clipped and cold. Yes? Hi, my name is Claire Dawson. I'm working on a documentary about the... We're not interested. I just want to ask a few questions. It won't take long. Miss Dawson, the family has made it very clear they do not wish to participate in any media projects. Please leave. I understand, but... And... The intercom clicked off. I stood there for a moment, staring up at the mansion through the bars of the gate. The windows were dark, the lawn, perfect. It looked like a postcard, but I knew better. Something horrible had happened here, and someone was working very hard to make sure no one found out. What? I turned to walk back to my car when I noticed something, a small gap in the hedges along the east side of the property. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I glanced around. No cameras that I could see, no security guards, just silence. I slipped through the gap and found myself standing in the garden. The rose bushes were still there, tall and blooming, and beyond them, near the back corner, I saw it, a stone bench, flowers laid at its base, fresh ones. Someone still came here. Someone still remembered. I knelt down and looked closer. There was a small plaque embedded in the stone. Sophia Martinez, beloved daughter, gone too soon. I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just a crime scene. This was a grave without a body. I stood up, brushing the dirt from my knees, and turned to leave. But then I saw it. Tucked beneath the bench, half hidden by moss and old leaves, was a small notebook. The cover was faded, water-stained, but intact. I picked it up carefully and opened it. The handwriting was childish, looping and uneven. A girl's handwriting. I turned to the last page that had been written on. There was a date at the top, 2 days before Sophia died, and beneath it, a single sentence that made my blood run cold. He came into my room again last night. I don't know what to do. I stood there in the garden, notebook clutched in my hands, reading that sentence over and over. He came into my room again last night. Not the boy, not the 12-year-old, just he. This changed everything. I carefully slipped the notebook into my jacket pocket and made my way back through the hedge, heart pounding. I couldn't risk being caught on the property, not yet. Not until I understood what I was holding. Back in my car, I sat for a long moment, staring at the mansion. Through the gates, the windows stared back, lifeless and cold. Who was Sophia writing about? The next morning, I returned to the estate. This time, I went through the front gate. I'd called ahead, posing as a journalist writing a feature on families affected by tragedy. It was vague enough to get me in the door. The Whitmores, I'd learned, were obsessed with image. They wanted the world to see them as victims, too. A housekeeper opened the door. She was young, maybe mid-20s, and looked exhausted. Her eyes darted past me, nervous. "Mrs. Whitmore is expecting you," she said quietly. Stepping aside. The interior of the house was exactly what I expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Everything gleamed. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. I was led into a sitting room where a woman waited, perched on the edge of a velvet sofa like a queen holding court. Victoria Whitmore, mid-50s, expensively dressed, her face smooth and unreadable. Miss Dawson. Her voice was polite, but there was no warmth in it. "Please sit." I sat across from her, pulling out my notebook. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Mrs. Whitmore, I know this must be incredibly difficult." She tilted her head slightly, a rehearsed gesture of sorrow. "We've endured a great deal, that poor girl. And the boy, well, justice was served." "You believe he did it?" "The court said he did. That's enough for me." I nodded slowly, choosing my words carefully. "Can you tell me what Sophia was like? What kind of girl she was?" Victoria's expression didn't change. "She was the housekeeper's daughter. I didn't know her well. She was quiet." "Did she spend much time in the house?" "She lived in the staff quarters with her mother. We provided for them generously." Her tone suggested that should be the end of the conversation. "And your sons?" I asked. "Were they close to Sophia?" Something flickered across her face, just for a second. Then it was gone. "My sons had no interaction with her." She stood abruptly. "I'm afraid I have an appointment, if you'll excuse me." Before I could respond, a man entered the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, early 20s. He wore an expensive suit and had the kind of face that was used to getting what it wanted. "Mother," he said, barely glancing at me. "The lawyer's on the phone." Victoria nodded and left without another word. The man turned to me, his smile thin and sharp. "You're the journalist?" "Documentarian," I corrected. "Same thing." He moved closer, hands in his pockets, casual but threatening. "Let me save you some time. The kid killed her. End of story. There's nothing else to dig up here. I'm just trying to understand what happened." "What happened," he said slowly, "is that a disturbed child committed a terrible crime. My family had nothing to do with it. We were victims too. And you are Ethan Whitmore." He stepped even closer, his voice dropping. "And I think it's time for you to leave." I held his gaze. There was something cold in his eyes, something that made my skin crawl. "Of course," I said, standing. "Thank you for your time." As I walked toward the door, I glanced back. Ethan was watching me, arms crossed, jaw tight. He looked like someone with something to hide. That evening, I sat in my hotel room and carefully opened Sophia's diary again. I read every page this time. Slowly. Most of it was innocent. School crushes, drawings of flowers, notes about her mother's cooking. But scattered throughout were darker entries. "He scares me. I told Mama, but she said to stay quiet. Why does he keep looking at me like that?" And then, on the very last page, written in shaky handwriting, "I'm going to tell someone. I don't care anymore. He can't keep doing this." I closed the diary and leaned back, my mind racing. Sophia had been afraid of someone in that house, someone who had access to her, someone she saw regularly. Not the 12-year-old boy who lived there as a charity case, barely noticed by the family. Someone else. I picked up my phone and pulled up a photo I'd taken earlier. A family portrait. Hanging in the Whitmore hallway. Victoria and her husband, stern and distant, and their 2 sons. The younger one, pale and anxious-looking, and Ethan, standing tall, confident, smiling. I stared at his face for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. Ethan Whitmore, 23, years old, Princeton dropout, no job, no criminal record. But there were gaps. Big ones, a year unaccounted for. Private schools that wouldn't comment. Sealed records. I kept digging. And then I found it. A brief mention in a local newspaper from 3 years ago. A complaint filed by a former tutor. Allegations of inappropriate behavior. The case was dismissed. The tutor paid off. The article had been scrubbed from most sites. But I found a cached version. I sat back, my hands shaking. Sophia had been writing about Ethan, and now she was dead. The juvenile detention center was 2 hours. Outside the city, surrounded by chain-link fences and concrete walls. It looked more like a prison than a place for children. I'd spent 3 days convincing them to let me visit. The warden didn't want media attention, but I wasn't media. I was just someone looking for the truth. They brought him into a small room with a metal table and 2 chairs. No windows, just fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. When the door opened, I barely recognized him. He was thinner now, pale. His hair had grown out, messy and unkempt. The oversized jumpsuit hung off his shoulders like a costume. He looked even younger than 12. He sat down across from me and stared at the table. His hands were folded in his lap, perfectly still. "Hi," I said gently. "My name is Claire. I'm making a documentary about your case." He didn't respond. "I'm not here to judge you. I just want to understand what happened." Still nothing. I opened my notebook, giving him space. "Can you tell me about the day Sophia died?" His jaw tightened, but he didn't look up. "Do you remember what you were doing that afternoon?" "I was in my room," he said quietly. His voice was flat, rehearsed. "Reading. What were you reading?" Pause. "I don't remember. Did you see Sophia that day?" "No." "Not at all?" "No." I leaned forward slightly. "The police say you confessed. Is that true?" His eyes finally flicked up to mine, just for a second, and in that second, I saw something. Fear. I told them what they wanted to hear. He said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do that?" He looked back down. "Because they said it would be easier. They said if I told the truth, they'd let me go home. But you didn't go home." "No." His hands trembled slightly. "I didn't." I watched him carefully. He wasn't cold. He wasn't emotionless. He was terrified. "Do you know who killed Sophia?" I asked softly. His breathing quickened. He glanced toward the door like he expected someone to burst in. "I can't," he whispered. "You can't what?" "I can't say." "Why not?" His eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back. "Because they told me if I did, something bad would happen. To me, to my mom." My chest tightened. "Who told you that?" He shook his head, his whole body tense. "Was it someone in the house?" He didn't answer. "Was it Ethan?" His head snapped up. For just a moment I saw it, the truth written all over his face. Then he stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "I have to go." "Wait. I can't help you." His voice cracked. He turned toward the door, but before the guard opened it, he stopped. He looked back at me, his eyes wet and desperate, and then he whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "They told me exactly what to say." The door opened, the guard let him out. I sat there alone, my heart racing. This boy didn't kill Sophia. He was just another victim. I found Maria Martinez living in a small apartment on the south side of town. It was a long way from the Whitmore estate, a long way from the life she used to have. She answered the door slowly, like she'd been expecting bad news. When she saw me, her face tightened. "I don't want to talk," she said in accented English. "Please, Mrs. Martinez, just 5 minutes." She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was small but tidy. Photographs of Sophia covered every surface. Smiling, laughing, alive. Maria sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked older than her years. Grief had carved deep lines into her face. "I loved my daughter," she said, her voice breaking. "More than anything. I know. That boy, they say he killed her. The court said so. Do you believe that?" Her eyes filled with tears. She looked away toward the window. "I don't know what to believe anymore." I leaned forward gently. "Mrs. Martinez, did Sophia ever tell you she was afraid of someone?" Maria's breath caught. Her hands trembled. "She was a good girl, quiet. She didn't cause trouble." "That's not what I asked." Silence. "Did she tell you about Ethan Whitmore?" Maria's face went pale. She stood abruptly, wringing her hands. "I can't. Please, I can't talk about this." "Why not?" "Because," her voice dropped to a whisper, "because I tried to protect them both, my daughter and that boy. I tried." "What do you mean?" Tears streamed down her face now. "I told her to stay quiet. I told her not to make trouble. I thought if she just stayed quiet, everything would be okay." My heart sank. "You knew something was happening." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "I needed that job. I needed to keep us safe. I thought—" A car door slammed outside. Maria froze. Her eyes went wide, darting to the window. A police cruiser was parked in front of the building. She grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. "You need to leave, now! Mrs. Martinez, go!" I grabbed my bag and slipped out the back door just as someone knocked on the front. I stood in the alley, heart pounding, and watched through a crack in the fence as 2 officers entered her apartment. Maria wasn't just grieving. She was being watched. The next morning, I started digging into the boy's defense attorney. His name was Gerald Brennan, 52 years old, 20 years of experience, a respectable record. But something felt off. I pulled up the trial transcripts again and read through his cross-examinations. They were weak, almost non-existent. He barely challenged the prosecution's timeline, didn't call expert witnesses, didn't question the confession tape. It was like he wasn't even trying. I searched for his contact information and found an office address downtown. When I called, a receptionist told me he no longer practiced law. "Since when?" I asked. "About 6 months ago. He retired." "Retired?" "He's 52. "I'm just telling you what I know, ma'am." I hung up and kept digging. Public records showed that 2 months before the trial, Brennan had formed an LLC, a consulting firm. Vague name, no clear purpose. I traced the business filings and found something interesting. One of the partners listed was a man named Richard Colfax. I recognized the name immediately. Richard Colfax was the Whitmore family's personal attorney. My stomach turned. Brennan hadn't just failed to defend the boy. He'd been paid not to. I needed to talk to him. I found his home address and drove out that afternoon. It was a quiet suburban street, nice houses, manicured lawns. Brennan's place sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a 2-story colonial with a white picket fence. I parked across the street and watched for a moment. No movement inside. I walked up to the front door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. I tried the doorbell. It echoed inside, but no one came. I stepped back and looked up at the windows. The blinds were drawn. The driveway was empty. Something felt wrong. I walked around to the side of the house and peered through a gap in the fence. The backyard was overgrown, like no one had touched it in weeks. I pulled out my phone and called the number I'd found for Brennan. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. "Mr. Brennan, my name is Claire Dawson. I'm investigating the Whitmore case and I'd like to speak with you about your role in the defense. Please call me back." I hung up and stared at the house. Where was he? 2 days later, I got my answer. I was sitting in a coffee shop, reviewing notes when my phone buzzed. A news alert. "Local attorney dies in single-car accident." I clicked the article, my hands shaking. Gerald Brennan, 52, found dead at the bottom of a ravine on Highway 9. His car had gone off the road late at night. No witnesses, no skid marks. Authorities ruled it an accident. I read the article 3 times, my mind racing. No skid marks. That meant he didn't try to stop, didn't try to brake. Either he fell asleep at the wheel or someone made sure he couldn't. I scrolled down to the comments section. Most were generic condolences, but one stood out. It was posted anonymously, just 2 hours after the article went live. Some people know too much. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. Brennan had been paid to throw the case, and now he was dead. This wasn't just a cover-up anymore. This was something much worse. I spent the next few hours digging deeper into Brennan's finances. Bank records, property filings, anything I could access legally. And then I found it. A deposit, made 3 weeks before the trial, $50,000, wired from an offshore account. The account was registered to a shell company. And that shell company, owned by a holding group tied directly to the Whitmore Family Trust. I sat back, staring at the screen. They'd bought him, and when he became a liability, they got rid of him. I grabbed my phone and called my editor. "Claire?" His voice was cautious. "What's going on?" "I need you to listen." Carefully, I said. "The boy didn't kill Sofia Martinez. He was framed, and the people who did it are covering their tracks. His lawyer was paid off, and now he's dead." Silence on the other end. "Claire, that's a serious accusation." "I have proof." "Then bring it to the police." "The police are part of this. I'm sure of it." Another pause. "Be careful," he said finally. "If what you're saying is true, you're dealing with people who won't hesitate to silence you too." I hung up and sat in the quiet coffee shop, surrounded by people who had no idea what I'd just uncovered. Somewhere out there, a 12-year-old boy was sitting in a cell, taking the fall for a crime he didn't commit, and the real killer was walking free. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that phrase. Her food was terrible. It had become a cultural phenomenon, a meme, a punchline. People made TikToks imitating the boy's flat delivery. Twitter threads debated whether he was a psychopath or just evil. True crime. YouTubers dissected his facial expressions frame by frame. The entire country had decided he was guilty before the trial even ended. But how? I sat up in bed and opened my laptop. If someone had orchestrated Brennan's sabotage, maybe they'd orchestrated the public narrative too. I started with the original video, the one that went viral. It had been posted by a local news station's Facebook page 2 hours after the police interview. Within 24 hours, it had 15 million views. But who shared it first? I tracked the earliest reposts. Most came from large accounts, political commentators, celebrity gossip pages, accounts with hundreds of thousands of followers, all posting within minutes of each other. That wasn't organic. That was coordinated. I reached out to a digital forensics expert I'd worked with before. His name was Marcus. He specialized in tracking bot networks and misinformation campaigns. "Can you look at something for me?" I asked when he answered. "Depends. How illegal is it?" "Not illegal, just suspicious." He laughed. "Send it over." Marcus called me back 6 hours later. "You were right," he said. "This was a coordinated push. I found at least 200 bot accounts amplifying the video in the first 12 hours. They used identical hashtags, posted at synchronized times, and shared scripted comments. Can you trace where they came from?" I traced them to a server farm in Eastern Europe. Common setup for hired influence campaigns. But here's the interesting part. What? The payment for the campaign was processed through a US-based digital marketing firm. I pulled their client list. He paused. "One of their biggest clients, Whitmore Media Holdings." My breath caught. "Are you sure?" "Positive. They've been paying this firm for years. Crisis management, reputation control, astroturfing, the whole playbook." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. They didn't just frame the boy in court. They framed him in the court of public opinion first. "Marcus, can you send me everything you found?" "Already did. Check your email." I thanked him and hung up. My inbox pinged. I opened the files he'd sent. Screenshots, network maps, payment records. And then I saw something that made my stomach drop. One of the bot accounts had posted something different. Not a meme, not outrage. A direct message sent to dozens of journalists and influencers. "Kid's a monster. Let's make sure everyone knows it." The account was registered under a fake name, but the email address tied to it, it belonged to a public relations consultant, a consultant who worked exclusively for the Whitmore family. I spent the next 2 days building a timeline. The video was released. The bots amplified it. The hashtags trended. And within 72 hours, the narrative was locked in. Cold-blooded child killer. No remorse. No humanity. By the time the trial started, the jury had already seen the coverage. The protesters outside had already made up their minds. The boy never had a chance. I pulled up news clips from the trial. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, interviewing people on the street. "Do you think he's guilty?" "Absolutely. Did you see that video? He's evil. What do you think should happen to him?" "Death penalty, no question." One woman held a sign that read, "Justice for Sophia." But justice wasn't what this was. This was the execution by public opinion, and someone had pulled the strings. That night I received an email. No subject line, no signature, just a message. "Stop digging. You won't like what you find." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. I checked the sender. The email address was a string of random numbers and letters. Untraceable. I screenshot it and forwarded it to Marcus. "Can you trace this?" He responded within minutes. "Sent through a VPN, routed through 3 countries. Whoever sent it knows what they're doing." I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, heart pounding. They knew I was getting close, and they wanted me to stop. But I couldn't. Not now. A 12-year-old boy was on death row because someone had lied. Someone had paid. Someone had manipulated an entire nation into believing he was a monster. I opened my notebook and wrote one sentence at the top of a new page. Who benefits from his conviction? The answer was obvious, the Whitmores. I needed hard evidence, something undeniable, something that couldn't be spun or buried. I called Dr. Raymond Holt, a forensic pathologist I'd worked with on a previous case. He was meticulous, respected, and most importantly, he couldn't be bought. "Claire," he said when I answered. "It's been a while. I need a favor." "Of course you do." He sighed, but I could hear the smile in his voice. "What is it this time?" "The Sophia Martinez case. I need you to look at the autopsy report." There was a pause. "That case is closed." "I know, but I think they got it wrong." Another pause, longer this time. "Send me what you have." 2 days later, we met at a diner on the edge of town. Dr. Holt sat across from me, a folder open in front of him. His face was grim. "You were right to call me," he said quietly. "What did you find?" He pulled out a diagram of Sophia's injuries. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, a single blow. The prosecution argued it was done with a metal pipe found near the body. Right. But here's the problem. He tapped the diagram. The angle of the wound is wrong. The force required to cause this kind of fracture? It's significant. We're talking about an adult's strength, maybe even someone athletic. My pulse quickened. Not a 12-year-old. Not unless that 12-year-old was a bodybuilder. He leaned back. And there's more. The position of the body suggests she was struck from behind while standing. That means the attacker was taller than her. Significantly taller. How tall was the boy? Dr. Holt pulled out another page. According to his medical records from the trial, he was 4'9". Sophia was 4'6". The trajectory of the blow came from someone at least 5'8", maybe taller. I felt a chill run down my spine. Why didn't the defense bring this up? I don't know, but they should have. He closed the folder and looked at me. Claire, this wasn't a child. This was someone much bigger, much stronger. Can you put that in writing? He hesitated. If I do, it'll... Raise a lot of questions. Questions people won't want answered. Please. He nodded slowly. I'll draft a report, but I need you to understand something. If I submit this officially, my career could be over. People don't like it when you make them look incompetent or corrupt. I understand. Good. He stood, tucking the folder under his arm. I'll have it ready in 2 days. 2 days later, I was back at the diner waiting. Dr. Holt was late. I checked my phone. No messages. I called him. It went straight to voicemail. I waited another 20 minutes, anxiety building in my chest. Finally, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dr. Holt won't be able to help you. He's been let go. My hands shook. I called the hospital where he worked. The receptionist answered. I'm looking for Dr. Raymond Holt. I'm sorry, Dr. Holt is no longer with this facility. Since when? As of this morning. I hung up and sat there staring at nothing. They'd fired him, just for looking at the case. But then my email pinged. I opened it. It was from Dr. Holt. No message, just an attachment. The forensic report. I opened it with trembling hands and read every word. He'd documented everything. The angle, the force, the impossibility of a child being the perpetrator. At the bottom, he'd written a final note. This boy didn't kill her. Someone wanted you to think he did. I saved the file to 3 different drives and printed 2 copies. Then I texted Dr. Holt. Thank you, I'm sorry. He responded immediately. Just make sure it matters. I closed my laptop and stared out the window. The evidence was piling up. The lawyer, the social media campaign, and now the forensics. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. The boy was innocent, and the Whitmores had destroyed anyone who tried to prove it. I spent the next week combing through every name connected to the case, people who worked at the house, people who lived nearby, anyone who might have seen something. That's when I found her. Emma Torrance, 14 years old. She'd been Sophia's best friend. Her name appeared once in the police report, a brief mention that she'd been interviewed, but she was never called to testify. I found her mother's number and called. Mrs. Torrance, my name is Claire Dawson. I'm investigating the Sophia Martinez case, and I was hoping to speak with your daughter. There was a long silence. Emma doesn't want to talk about that. I understand, but she's been through enough. Please don't contact us again. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone. Emma knew something. I was sure of it. I couldn't force her to talk, but maybe I didn't have to. I found Emma. 3 days later, sitting alone on a bench outside her school. She was small, pale, her shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear. I approached carefully. Emma? She looked up, startled. Who are you? My name is Claire. I'm looking into what happened to Sophia. Her face went pale. She stood quickly. I can't talk to you. Please, just 5 minutes. No, I can't. She started walking away. Emma, I know you saw something. She stopped. Her hands were shaking. You were her friend, I said gently. You knew her better than anyone. If there's something the police missed, they didn't miss it. Her voice cracked. They ignored it. I stepped closer. What do you mean? She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. I told them what I saw that night, but they said I was wrong. They said I was confused. What did you see? She hesitated, glancing around, like someone might be listening. I was supposed to sleep over at Sophia's that night, but my mom got sick, so I went home early. Around 6:30, I was walking past the garden when I saw them. Who? Sophia. And him. My heart pounded. Who was with her? Ethan. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Ethan Whitmore, he was yelling at her, she was crying. I hid behind the bushes because I didn't want them to see me. What were they arguing about? I don't know. But I heard him say, if you tell anyone, you'll regret it. She wiped her eyes. I should have done something. I should have. It's not your fault, I said firmly. What happened after that? I ran. I was scared. I went home and didn't say anything. And then the next day, she was dead. Did you tell the police this? Yes. The detective wrote it down. But then a few days later, he came back and said I must have been mistaken. He said Ethan wasn't even there that night, that he was at a friend's house. But you know what you saw. I know. Her voice was barely audible, but no one believed me. I pulled out my phone. Will you tell me again? On camera? Your face doesn't have to be in it. She looked terrified. I can't. My mom said, Emma, a boy is going to die for something he didn't do. You're the only person who can help him. She closed her eyes, tears falling freely now. Okay, she whispered. Okay. We recorded the interview in my car. Emma sat in the passenger seat, hood pulled up, face turned away from the camera. Her voice shook, but she told me everything. When we finished, I thanked her and watched her walk back toward her house. I sat there for a moment staring at the recording. This was it. A witness who placed Ethan at the scene. A witness who heard him threaten Sophia. But before I could even process it, my phone rang. It was Emma's mother. What did you do? She screamed. What did you say to my daughter? Mrs. Torrance, someone broke into our house. They destroyed Emma's room, her laptop, her phone, everything. My stomach dropped. Is she okay? Stay away from us, do you? Hear me? Stay away or I swear. She hung up. I sat there, frozen, staring at the phone in my hand. They'd gotten to her. Already. I looked down at the recording on my phone. At least I had this. I couldn't stop thinking about what Emma had said. If you tell anyone, you'll regret it. Ethan had threatened Sophia. But why? What was she going to tell? I went back to Sophia's diary and read it again, slower this time, looking for anything I might have missed. Most entries were about school, friends, her mother. But then I found something buried in the middle pages. Mama's been crying a lot. She won't tell me why, but I heard her on the phone. Someone wants money, a lot of money. Money. I sat up straighter. If Maria was being extorted, who was doing it? And why? I started digging into the Whitmore family finances, property records, business filings, tax documents, anything publicly available. What I found was a mess. The Whitmores were wealthy, yes, but they were also drowning in debt. The estate was mortgaged, twice. Their media company had taken out loans it couldn't repay. And 3 years ago, Victoria Whitmore had liquidated several investments at a loss. They looked rich. But they were barely holding on. And then I found the insurance policy. It was buried in a legal filing from 2 years ago. A life insurance policy taken out on all household staff. Standard practice for wealthy families, or so it seemed. But the payout amount caught my eye, $2 million per person. I stared at the screen. If a staff member died while employed, the family received $2 million. Sophia had been living on the estate with her mother. Technically, she was covered under Maria's employment. I pulled up the dates. The policy had been updated 6 months before Sophia's death. The payout had been increased from $500,000 to $2 million. My hands were shaking. Someone had known. Someone had planned this. I called a contact at an insurance investigation firm. Hey, it's Claire. I need you to look into a policy for me. Sure. What's the company? I gave him the details. He called me back an hour later. This is weird, he said. What did you find? The claim was filed 2 days after the girl's death. Fast. Way faster than normal. And it was paid out within a week. That's unusual? Extremely. These things usually take months. Background checks, investigations, verification. But this one? Rubber stamped. Who approved it? The underwriter. But here's the kicker. He left the company 3 weeks later. Took a job with a firm that has ties to, guess who? The Whitmores. Bingo. I thanked him and hung up. $2 million, that was the motive. Sophia wasn't just murdered. She was a payday. I went back to Maria's apartment that night. I had to know if she understood what had happened. She answered the door, her face pale and tired. When she saw me, she tried to close it. Please, I said. I know about the insurance policy. She froze. I know they collected $2 million when Sophia died. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But you suspected something. She nodded, her hands trembling. After she died, they gave me money. A lot of money. They said it was for my grief, for my loss. But it felt wrong, like they were paying me to stay quiet. Did you take it? She looked away, ashamed. I had no choice. I had no job, no home. I needed to survive. Maria, what was Sophia going to tell someone? What did she know? Maria's face crumpled. She sank onto the couch, sobbing. She found papers, she whispered. In Mr. Whitmore's office, financial documents. She didn't understand them, but she showed them to me. What did they say? They showed the family was broke, that they owed millions to banks, investors, people I'd never heard of, and there were names. People they'd paid off, people they'd silenced. Where are those papers now? I don't know. Sophia hid them somewhere. She said she was going to give them to someone who could help, but she never got the chance. I leaned forward. Maria, do you think Ethan killed her to stop her from talking? She covered her face with her hands. I don't know, she sobbed. But I know she was scared of him. I know he hurt her. And I know that the night she died, she told me she was going to tell the truth. No matter what. I sat back, my mind racing. Sophia had evidence. Evidence that could destroy the Whitmores. And they killed her for it. But where were those papers now? I couldn't stop thinking about the boy's confession, the one that had sealed his fate. I'd seen it a dozen times, but I'd never really listened. I went back to my hotel and pulled up the video again. The grainy footage of the police interview. The boy sitting in a metal chair too small for his body. 2 detectives across from him. No lawyer, no parent, just a scared kid. I watched it with fresh eyes. Detective Harris, we know you did it. We just need you to tell us why. The boy stared at the table, silent. Detective Morris, look, kid, this doesn't have to be hard. You tell us the truth, we make sure you're protected, but if you don't cooperate, things get a lot worse. The boy's hands were shaking. Detective Harris, did you hurt Sophia? Silence. Detective Morris, come on, we've been here for 3 hours. Just say, you'll feel better. More silence. Detective Harris, if you tell us now, we can help you, we can make this easier. But if you don't, he let the threat hang in the air. The boy finally looked up. His eyes were red, exhausted. I didn't mean to, he whispered. Detective Morris, you didn't. Mean to what? Hurt her. Detective Harris, so you admit it? You hurt Sophia? The boy nodded barely. Detective Morris, why did you do it? A long pause. The boy looked like he was going to cry. Then he said it. Her food was terrible. The detectives exchanged a glance. Detective Harris, her food? Yeah. Detective Morris, that's why you killed her, because of her food. The boy nodded again, but his face was blank. Empty, like he was reading lines from a script he didn't understand. The video ended. I rewound it and watched again. This time I focused on the detectives. The way Detective Morris leaned in, the way Detective Harris's hand moved toward something off camera. And then I saw it. Right before the boy said, her food was terrible, Detective Morris's lips moved slightly. He was mouthing something. I slowed the video down frame by frame. His lips formed 2 words. Say it. My stomach turned. They'd fed him the line. I dug deeper into the confession. Who had authorized the interview without a lawyer present? Who had allowed it to be used in court? The answer was Judge Harold Finch. I pulled up his record. 30 years on the bench, respected, conservative, a stickler for procedure, except in this case. He'd ruled the confession admissible, even though every defense attorney in the country would have called it coerced. Why? I started looking into Judge Finch's financials, and that's when I found it. 2 months before the trial, he'd received a $25,000 donation to his re-election campaign, From the Whitmore Family Foundation. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. They'd bought the judge. I reached out to a lawyer I trusted, someone who specialized in wrongful convictions. "Claire, this is explosive," she said after I sent her everything. "If you can prove the confession was coerced and the judge was compromised, you could get the conviction overturned. What do I need? More than what you have. You need someone on the inside, someone willing to testify that the detectives were told to get that confession no matter what. Who would do that?" She paused. "Someone with nothing left to lose." I found Detective Harris 2 days later. He'd retired 6 months after the trial. Moved to a small town upstate. No forwarding address, no social media. But I tracked him down. He lived in a cabin by a lake alone. When I knocked on the door, he opened it halfway, eyes wary. "Detective Harris? I'm not a detective anymore. I know. I'm Claire Dawson. I'm investigating the Sofia Martinez case." His face hardened. "That case is closed." "It shouldn't be." He started to close the door. "Please, I said. "I know what happened in that interrogation room. I know you were told to get a confession. I just need you to confirm it." He stopped. His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm asking you to tell the truth." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "Off the record," he said quietly. "Okay. We were told to close the case fast. No questions, no delays. The family wanted it done." "The Whitmores?" He nodded. "We were told the boy did it. We were told to make him confess, so we did. You fed him the line." He looked away. "Morris did. I didn't stop it." "Why?" "Because I was told if I didn't, I'd lose my pension, my career, everything." His voice cracked. "I have a family. I couldn't risk it. Will you testify to that?" He laughed bitterly. "And sign my own death warrant? No, I'm done." He turned to "Go back inside. A boy is on death row," I said. "An innocent boy." He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. "I know," he whispered. And then he went inside and shut the door. I stood there in the cold, staring at the cabin. I had the truth, but I couldn't prove it. I was running out of time, the boys. The execution date had been set. 6 months away. Every lead pointed to Ethan Whitmore, but I needed something concrete, something that would force people to listen. I started digging into Ethan's past, not just newspaper articles, deeper, school records, medical files, anything I could legally access. And that's when I found the restraining order. It had been filed 4 years ago by a girl named Ashley Brenner. She'd been 17 at the time. Ethan had been 19. The order had been sealed almost immediately, expunged from public records, but I found a cached copy of the initial filing. Ashley claimed Ethan had stalked her, followed her home from school, showed up at her house uninvited. When she told him to stop, he'd threatened her. The case never went to trial. The Whitmores paid her family. The records disappeared. I tracked down Ashley's current address. She was living 2 states away now, working as a teacher. I called her. "Hello?" "Hi, Ashley. My name is Claire Dawson. I'm a documentary filmmaker and I'm investigating Ethan Whitmore." There was a long silence. "I have nothing to say about him." "I understand, but I think he hurt someone else. A little girl, and I need to prove it." Her breathing quickened. "What do you want from me?" "Just the truth. What happened between you and Ethan?" Another silence. "I signed an NDA," she said finally. "If I talk, I lose everything. They made sure of that. Ashley, a child is dead, and an innocent boy is going to be executed for it. If Ethan did this, he did." Her voice cracked. "I know he did because he told me what he was capable of." My heart pounded. "What did he say?" He said if anyone ever tried to expose him, he'd make them disappear. He said his family could make anything go away. Anyone. Did he ever hurt you physically?" She was crying now. Yes, once he grabbed me, pushed me against a wall, said I belonged to him. That's when I filed the restraining order, but it didn't matter. His family made it all disappear. Will you go on record? I can't, I'm sorry. I have a life. I have a family. I can't risk it. Ashley, I'm sorry. She hung up. I sat there gripping my phone. Another dead end. That night, I went back to the Whitmore estate. I parked a block away and walked up to the gates. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to see the place again, to think. I stood there, in the dark, staring at the mansion through the iron bars. And then I saw him, Ethan. He was standing in the garden, smoking a cigarette, alone. I watched him for a moment. He looked calm, unbothered, like a man who'd gotten away with murder. Before I could think, I pushed the gate. It wasn't locked. I slipped inside and walked toward him, my heart hammering in my chest. He turned when he heard my footsteps. His face hardened. You're trespassing. I know what you did, I said. He smiled, cold, amused. Do you? You killed Sophia, and you framed that boy. He took a drag from his cigarette, exhaling slowly. Prove it. I will. He stepped closer. No, you won't. Because even if you think you have evidence, it won't matter. My family owns this town, the police, the judges, the media. You can scream all you want, no one will listen. People are already listening. His smile faded. Then they'll stop. He moved even closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You should leave, Claire, while you still can. Is that a threat? It's advice. He turned and walked back toward the house. I stood there, shaking with rage and fear. When I got back to my hotel, the door was ajar. I froze. I pushed it open slowly. The room had been torn apart. My laptop was gone. My files scattered across the floor. The mattress overturned. And on the mirror, written in red lipstick, were 3 words, stop or die. I staggered back, my breath coming in short gasps. They'd been in my room. They'd touched my things. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and called the police. But then I stopped. The police were part of this. Calling them would do nothing. I grabbed what was left of my files and left. I checked into a different hotel under a fake name, paid cash, kept the lights off. And for the first time since I started this investigation, I was truly afraid. But I couldn't stop now. Not when I was this close. I couldn't trust anyone. Not the police. Not the courts. Not the system that was supposed to protect the innocent. So I went after the money. I spent 3 days cross-referencing donations, campaign contributions, and financial records. And what I found was a web of corruption so deep, it made my stomach turn. Judge Finch, $25,000 from the Whitmore Foundation, District Attorney Paul Kemper, $50,000, split across 2 campaigns. Police, Chief Raymond Douglas, his daughter's college tuition, paid in full by a Whitmore Scholarship Fund. Detective Morris, a promotion 6 months after the trial, a new house purchased shortly after. They'd bought the entire system. Every person who could have stopped this, every person who should have questioned the evidence, all of them paid off. I printed everything and put it in a folder. Then I did something risky. I reached out to a journalist, not just any journalist, Sarah Chen, investigative reporter for a major national network, someone with reach, someone who couldn't be silenced. We met in a parking garage. She arrived alone, wearing sunglasses, even though it was overcast. Show me what you have, she said. I handed her the folder. She flipped through it slowly, her expression darkening with each page. When she finished, she looked up at me. This is enough to destroy them. Then help me. She hesitated. If I run this story, they'll come after me and you. They already are. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do it. But we go live. No edits, no delays. Once this airs, there's no taking it back. When? 2 days. I'll arrange a primetime slot. Thank you. She handed the folder back. Keep this safe, make copies, hide them. I will. As she turned to leave, she stopped. Claire, be careful. These people don't lose quietly. The next 48 hours were a nightmare. Sarah and I worked around the clock preparing the segment. We compiled interviews, documents, recordings. Everything laid out in a timeline that was impossible to ignore. But they fought back. The morning the story was supposed to air, Sarah called me, her voice shaking. They're blocking it. What? The network received a legal threat. Defamation. The Whitmores are threatening to sue for $200 million if we air the segment. My heart sank. Can they do that? They can try, and my producers are scared. They're talking about pulling the piece. No, we're too close. I know, but I need more time. I need to convince them this is airtight. I hung up and paced my hotel room. We couldn't let them bury this, not now. Then I had an idea. If the network wouldn't air it, I would. I set up a live stream. No corporate interference, no lawyers, just me and the truth. I scheduled it for that night, 8 p.m., and I sent the link to every journalist, activist, and true crime follower I could find. Then I posted it on social media with a simple message. The truth about the Sofia Martinez case. Tonight, 8 p.m. They tried to silence me. Watch before they take it down. Within an hour, it had been shared 10,000 times. By 6 p.m., 50,000. By 7, hashtags were trending. People were waiting, but so were they. At 7:30, my internet cut out. I tried my phone's hotspot. It wouldn't connect. I grabbed my laptop and ran downstairs to the hotel lobby, used their Wi-Fi. At 7:55, I went live. My hands were shaking as I stared into the camera. My name is Claire Dawson, I said, and I'm about to tell you the truth about a 12-year-old boy who's sitting on death row for a crime he didn't commit. The viewer count climbed. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. I showed everything. The forensics, the confession tape, the financial records, Emma's testimony, Dr. Holt's report, and I named names. Ethan Whitmore, Judge Finch, Detective Morris, the whole system. By the time I finished, 200,000 people were watching. I looked into the camera one last time. They tried to bury the truth, but the truth doesn't stay buried. I ended the stream and waited. The video went viral. Within hours, it had been viewed over 5 million times. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. The hashtag, Justice for the Innocent, trended worldwide. People were furious, not at the boy anymore, at the system that had failed him. Protests erupted. Outside the courthouse, outside the Whitmore estate, outside the police station. The pressure was too much to ignore. 3 days after the broadcast, the Attorney General announced a full investigation into the case. 2 weeks later, Ethan Whitmore was formally charged with the murder of Sofia Martinez. The evidence was overwhelming. Emma's testimony, Dr. Holt's forensic report, the financial records showing motive, the pattern of payoffs and corruption. Judge Finch resigned. Detective Morris was suspended. District Attorney Kemper faced ethics violations. And the boy, the 12-year-old, who'd spent 2 years on death row for a crime he didn't commit, was released. I was there the day he walked out. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner. His eyes were different now, older, haunted. His mother was waiting for him outside the gates, sobbing. She pulled him into her arms and held him like she'd never let go. He didn't cry. He just stood there, stiff and uncertain, like he didn't know how to be free. I stayed back, watching from a distance. He deserved this moment, not with cameras, not with reporters, just with his mother. The trial for Ethan Whitmore lasted 3 months. The prosecution presented everything I'd uncovered. Witnesses testified. Documents were entered into evidence. The confession tape was dissected frame by frame. Ethan's lawyers fought hard. They tried to discredit Emma. They claimed the forensic report was biased. They argued the financial records proved nothing. But the jury didn't buy it. They convicted him on all counts: murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to life without parole. Victoria Whitmore sat in the gallery, stone-faced, as her son was led away in handcuffs. She never looked at me, not once, but I saw her. Saw hand tremble as she gripped the armrest. Justice had been served, but it didn't feel like victory. Because the truth was, the system had still failed. The boy had lost 2 years of his life. Maria had lost her daughter. Sophia was still gone. And the people who'd enabled it, the judges, the detectives, the politicians, most of them walked away with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. Judge Finch retired quietly. Detective Morris took early retirement with full pension. District Attorney Kemper lost his re-election but landed a cushy job at a private firm. The Whitmore family lost their fortune. Their estate was seized to pay legal fees and settlements. But no one else went to prison. The system protected its own, even when it failed. 6 months later, I released the full documentary. It aired on a major streaming platform and was watched by tens of millions of people. The response was overwhelming. Outrage, sadness, calls for reform. Some states passed laws requiring recorded interrogations with legal representation for minors. Others reformed their campaign finance laws to prevent judicial corruption. Small changes, but changes nonetheless. I visited the boy one last time before the documentary premiered. He was living with his mother in a small apartment across town, trying to rebuild a life that had been stolen from him. When I arrived, he was sitting on the couch, staring out the window. "Hi," I said softly. He looked up. "Hi. I wanted to give you this." I handed him a flash drive. "It's the documentary. You can watch it if you want, or not. It's your choice." He took it, turning it over in his hands. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for believing me. I'm sorry it took so long." He nodded. "Everyone thought I was a monster. You're not." No. He looked down. "But sometimes I still feel like one. Like maybe I deserved it." My chest tightened. "You didn't. None of this was your fault." He didn't respond, just kept staring at the flash drive. I stood to leave, but before I reached the door, he spoke again. "Do you think people will remember her?" he asked. "Sophia. Do you think they'll remember who she really was? Not just what happened to her?" I turned back. "I think they will. Because of you. Because you didn't let them bury the truth." He nodded slowly, and for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. Just a little. The documentary ended with a quote I'd found in Sophia's diary, written a week before she died. "I'm scared, but I have to tell the truth. Because if I don't, no one will." She'd been 10 years old, and she'd been braver than anyone I'd ever known. The final frame faded to black, and a single sentence appeared on the screen. "Lies win when the truth has to ask permission." The credits rolled, and somewhere I hoped Sophia could finally rest.